And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live Monday, 3 p.m. like we do every single week for Upon Further Review. Thanks to those of you who have already gone, listened, watched, or downloaded our instant reaction show. But, when we get things cranking right at the end of Ohio State, Penn State, that does mean that there was additional late night action we didn't get a chance to watch. Plus, our usual Sunday and Monday process of going back, coming through the box scores, watching some of the games that we hadn't gotten to, which is why we love to take a little bit of time before turning the page here with Upon Further Review. But, gentlemen, we must begin with a Power 5 coaching change that things moved very, very quickly as Gary Patterson is now out at TCU. Jerry Kill takes over in the immediate future to guide the Horned Frogs the rest of the way on the field, but TCU's administration now joins what is becoming a more and more crowded Power 5 coaching carousel. Lots of possible dominoes to get to, and I kind of feel like we're just at that stage of the season where we're probably going to end up having at least 10 minutes every single Monday being like, and now this has happened. And now this has happened. So with the knowing that this impacts Texas Tech, but I thought you had a great comment in the group chat yesterday that this impacts Texas Tech search and the way that they need to go about their business. It impacts, all these other Power 5 coaching jobs in terms of the timetable. So let's see, Tom, go ahead and get us started. Where are you at with the end of the Gary Patterson era, and how do you view this TCU job?
I think that the timing is kind of ironic in a way that if we think of where TCU was when Gary Patterson got that job, because he became the defensive coordinator under Dennis Franchione at the time in 98, I want to say 97, 98. And TCU was then in the WAC. It had been forced to join the WAC after the Southwest Conference disbanded, and it didn't get an invite to the Big 12, and it needed a home to find. And then his very first game coaching TCU was in a bowl game as an interim after Dennis Franchione took the Alabama job, which also happened to be TCU's final game in the WAC as a WAC school. They lost to Southern Miss in a bowl game, and then they were in the same conference as Southern Miss the next year in Conference USA. They were there for a few years, won a conference title while they were there, moved to the Mountain West, won more conference titles while there, then finally got to the Big 12, won a conference title while there. And now Gary Patterson is leaving as TCU is maybe on the precipice of becoming one of the more powerful programs in the Big 12 once Oklahoma and Texas leave for the SEC, because, the school's location, what they have as far as the recruiting base that they're in and what's just going to be left in the Big 12, and plus what's coming with Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, BYU. So just to think of where that program was when he took over and where it's going to be now that he's leaving, I think that, we mentioned the conference titles, you can mention all the wins. It's kind of a throwback to when we think of the, historic coaches that built programs and then stayed there forever, because we see now, coaches are generally hired to get fired. There are very few guys that are sticking around as lifers and guys that are going to last for 2 decades like Patterson did, and guys who become somewhat synonymous with the football program itself. And I think Gary Patterson is synonymous with TCU football. It's a program that's existed for a long time and it's had success before him, but it was never really incredibly relevant on a national scale. It was always relevant in Texas. It's always had that kind of stuff, but they were competing, for Big 12 titles. They were in 2014. This is a team that almost nearly made the college football playoff in the very first year of its existence. And I just think that you look at what he was able to do there over time and what he was able to turn that program into. And this is a huge loss for TCU, and it's going to be really interesting to see where they go from here and what happens to that program now that he's no longer there.
I think this is a really good thing for TCU, actually, that they got him out now. I really think Gary Patterson was a good coach, right? But this team has too much talent to be playing like it was. This was sort of the bounce back. If he was going to get this thing turned around, I really believe this was going to have to be the year, and he didn't do it. They're just flat out bad. They have a lot of physical talent in this team, and they don't look really well coached. He managed to pick fights with seeming everybody they played this year and turn every press conference into an issue. He had a lot of very anti-player, anti-NIL comments, and that kind of dinosaur attitude is not going to play well going forward. I think with him being such a legend there, I mean, what if he had held on a lot longer, right? That could hurt them in the hiring process. Maybe Texas Tech makes a better hire, like you just mentioned. I mean, I think this is actually a pretty good thing they were able to rip the Band-Aid right now, because this was not going in the right direction. This was the bounce back year they needed to have, and they didn't have it.
What do you think, Danny?
Guy has a statue in front of the stadium.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he's done for this program. I think he got done dirty, the timing of it. And it's the trend. Like, get rid of him earlier and earlier and earlier so you can get the head start on your guy. And it sure does feel like Sonny Dykes is the guy right now that Texas Tech was going to go after. And now TCU is going to go after and say, oh, he's in our town. We don't have to move him that far. He's right down the road. He's the target that we want. I just hate that it happened to Gary Patterson this way, right? Like, you couldn't get your guy behind the scenes, at least like Gary Patterson finished the regular season. And I'm sure the conversation was pretty quick when Donati goes in.
Hold on. I know our TCU site said that he was given an opportunity to finish the season and chose not to.
I'm getting to that.
Well, yeah,
like, I'm sure he went in there and said,
no, but
hey.
You said at least give him the opportunity to finish the season.
But, exactly, but done it the right way, not, hey, we're going to go in and we're going to make a change, so you're gone. Do you want to stick around? Like, I wouldn't do that either. But there's a statue of him in front of the stadium. Like, this is a program he's pretty much single-handedly built. It could have been handled better. I hate the way it is. I agree with a lot of things you're saying. Like, it's been stale. Maybe it's just been too long. But, like, you couldn't have secured Sonny Dykes behind the scenes. You know, you couldn't, or your guy. Because I think what's going to be fascinating now is whichever one of these teams comes up with the short end of the stick. Then what? Who's your number two? You know, and then are you going to be thrilled with that? Is your fan base going to be thrilled with that? When Sonny Dykes is all of a sudden as hot as sliced bread, even though he just lost to Houston, which Houston's a good team. But then what if whatever booster was willing to pony up that money was like, oh, Jeff Traylor, you want me to pay $7.5 million extra to go buy him out from UTSA where he just got a new deal? Like, it just, I think these programs are just, they're stupid for this kind of cycle that we're in, where you go and you try to get ahead of everybody else, and it's not going to make a difference when it comes down to it. I don't know. I hate the timing of it.
I think that timing plays a huge role in that everything being thrown into the air this summer, college football playoff expansion, name, image, and likeness, conference realignment, everybody at the administrator level has a hair on fire. Nothing is certain. Like, run and go get all of the supplies from the grocery store that you need kind of attitude. And TCU, I think it is fair if you're a TCU fan to say we should be the class of the new Big 12. And if you don't think Gary Patterson is getting you there, then I won't argue against deciding to try and move on. Now, you mentioned Sonny Dykes, and he's got Spike Dykes' connection to Texas Tech. TCU, Texas Tech, is there an argument in the order that you would rank those jobs?
TCU, no argument.
No argument.
There's no
Dallas
argument
versus Lubbock, right?
Yes.
It can be that simple. Dallas versus Lubbock. Okay.
I do want to say, though, I agree with Danny in that, like, but you're right. There are all sorts of reasons for TCU to want to move on. But going back and listening to what everything I said that guy has done for the program, to do it this way is just a shitty way to do it. And it's not a respectful way to show the guy that built your entire damn program, because you just want to replace him with Sonny Dykes. And you're looking for an excuse to be able to get that done now without feeling bad about going behind his back. I think it's a crappy way. And again, we don't 100% know what's going on behind the scenes, but there's also a report from Adam Rittenberg yesterday that says, from what he's been told, you can expect Gary Patterson to be coaching again sometime soon. So this doesn't tell me that this is Gary Patterson saying, hey, I'm just done with it and tired and I'm ready to step down. This is kind of like a mutually agreeing two-part ways kind of thing. And I think it's kind of just a crappy way to go about things if I'm TCU.
There's never really a good way to end these, right? Now, let's say they had decided to not make the move right now, but they still needed to secure Sonny Dykes in this hypothetical that we think that's the guy, which I'm not really convinced it is, but I think he would be an interesting fit.
That's it.
Then it comes out that you're talking to Sonny Dykes behind the legend's back, right? Like, the thing is, the thanks you get for the job is the money. It's the check, right? Like, he did a tremendous job. He got them to the Big 12, right? No other sport that TCU plays got them to the Big 12. He worked his butt off. He recruited, he developed those guys, but they are 45 and 41 in Big 12 play. They are not a factor in the Big 12 in the vast majority of years they've been in the Big 12. They're going in the wrong direction. right?
Understood. But would you
Like-
rather be 45-41 in the Big 12 or sitting in Conference USA wondering where the hell you're going to be playing next year right now? Because that's what they have to thank Gary Patterson for.
Sure,
And they're
but they
not
thanked
really-
him with the money.
He's the 10th highest paid coach in college
Yes.
football.
The,
That's
the,
pretty
the
crazy.
thanks is the
I will
paycheck.
say this,
as
Bud.
Mad
And
Men
they-
said,
they
that's what the
still-
money's for.
They still owe him more than he owes them.
I think this is a very cautionary tale of be careful what you wish for. Like Sonny Dykes may be the hire and he might get the offense going and they're off to the races. Maybe they dominate the new Big 12, which they should. But we've seen a lot of schools part ways and make moves. And then you get into this cycle of firing coaches every 3 to 4 years. And you're like, man, that was pretty nice. Now it's been a rough stretch, right? It's been a rough stretch, but it wasn't that long ago. You almost made the playoff too. Like there have been some incredibly successful years. And you, like, go talk to a fan base that's never even sniffed that. And they've just been around 500 every year. And they'd say, give us that roller coaster ride all day long. Like, let us get a taste of what it's like to be in the top upper echelon of college football. And we'll take that. And I don't think it's a guarantee that whatever they hire, and this is not an indictment on Sonny Dykes or anybody else, that it's just going to be, because we've seen that. I mean, look at Texas right now with Sark. Like, it's so unbelievable. Like, Tom Herman gave them 7-8 wins a year. Guess what they're going to be now? They're probably going to be around 7 or 8 wins this season. And maybe it's the long answer, but they will keep cycling through until they get it. And everyone keeps looking for the next Urban Meyer, the next Nick Saban, and they don't exist out there sitting on every street's corner, or else we would see all these success stories. Tom mentioned it before. All we do is these coaches get hired to get fired. And it's the dumbest thing in college football. It makes zero sense.
So who is going to be the coach to get hired just to get fired by TCU? Because I'll tell you what, and I say this as a prediction, not as my value of him as a head coach. Sonny Dykes is a coach who gets hired to get fired. I think that Justin Fuente would be a coach that gets hired just to get fired. I
saw his name. I was like, I get he's got a history, but are you kidding me? Like, that's going to be your, hey, let's roll this out to the boosters and the fans. Are you kidding me?
Everybody's got agents, Danny. Everybody's got stuff going on.
Okay.
Gus Malzahn would be hired just to get fired. Like, there are a lot of coaches that would fit that role of what you're saying, where it's a cycle. But maybe there is someone out there that it's a perfect fit that is going to be able to continue it. To me, the odds do not suggest that whoever follows after the 20-year legend who forever transformed the program is going to be there for very long.
Go ahead, John.
I just want to pose one thing, because Sonny Dykes is the rumored hire. And while that would be super interesting just from the rivalry between SMU and TCU standpoint of TCU stealing SMU's coach, like, there's this thing with Texas schools where it's like they have to have a coach who knows Texas, right? Like, every single one. There's like this separate universe of Texas football where if a guy doesn't have experience in Texas, we can't hire him. What was the last Texas school to reach the college football playoff or have major success? Maybe you should consider hiring a coach from outside the state. Just say it.
Urban Meyer was not from Florida. Did pretty well at Florida. The being like, you don't necessarily have to be from there. I think you have to be able to quickly assimilate and understand the culture. But it's a little bit crazy to think that nobody who is not from there is able to do that. Just to get back to them this year, though, they have really, they've kind of quit, right? I mean, look, the
defense is bad, and if the defense is bad for Gary Patterson, that's at your feet.
No, quarterback development, defense is bad. Post-game win expectancies last 3 weeks, 3%, 7%, 1%. They only have a post-game win expectancy over 50% in one game this year against a D1 team. Like, this team was going in the wrong direction, and I think they're going to be worse next year given what they might lose. So I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm out on an island here thinking this is the right move. Just the timing you guys don't like, I guess.
I don't like the timing or the way it was handled.
Okay.
And there never is a great way. I saw the end of Bobby Bowden. That wasn't pretty, and there's a statue of him too. And
Bowden kept saying he wanted one more year, and they kept giving him one more year, and then he was like, "No, I really want one more year," and things kept going more downhill. Do you think that he would have gone well if they had given him through the rest of the year, and then let him go on Thanksgiving? Like, do you think he would have handled it better? No, but the optics
of everything, it looks more respectful, I think. And I don't think there's that much of a difference if Sonny Dykes, is Sonny Dykes going to step away from SMU and sign this deal tomorrow? And maybe one day that happens.
I think that
Right?
will
I mean, maybe
happen
one day that
eventually
happens.
with the early signing period.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the
Well, yeah, that's where it's
determinations.
trending.
Yes, because look at all the guys who signed in 2018. We'll talk about Florida in a little bit, right? Look at Jimbo's 2018 class. Look at Taggart's. Look at Frost's. Basically, everybody who was not an internal promotion, so not Day, not Cristobal, not Jimmy Lake. That first class you sign is a disaster. And I think the ability to sign a good first class and get a jump on things is important. Eventually, somebody will take that bullet and leave the team they're coaching midseason to go start work on their new team. It'll probably be a G5 to a P5 type jump, and they'll be the bad guy. But like once you sign with a new school, your dedication needs to be to that new school because they don't want to have that first class go for naught.
And this
Can
is
I ask
purely
you guys
anecdotal, but this is purely anecdotal, but like, just look at the trend of when coaching firings are being made.
Yeah.
They're being made earlier and earlier in the year. Why? It's a direct result of the early signing period. So it's only a matter of time before we start seeing coaches doing that in season.
Because nobody's really no one's been like, oh, they fired their coach early so they could lock up this guy and then he gets a head start. It only, it sets back again even worse. Now maybe this is where it's the mistake. Is TCU's staff right? Like what's that class going to look like? Is their kind of interim staff, are they still recruiting to TCU because they love the university? Hey, you should still come here, but their foot's out of the door. They're all looking for new jobs. Like their class is going to get blown up probably. Question for you guys, because I think we all agree that TCU above Texas Tech in the Big 12 as it sits now. Where does TCU rank in the new Big 12 with UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, BYU in the mix? Still up there, top 2 or 3?
Yes.
Yeah. As far as potential, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, would you rather have TCU or Cincy? I'd rather have TCU.
I'd rather have TCU.
What about UCF?
That's where we're saying top 2 or 3 and not confidently saying number 1. And that's where TCU wants to be number 1.
UCF spends, TCU does spend.
Yeah.
They both have geography.
Yeah, the thing that we can't know for sure when it comes to that kind of stuff, and we've seen examples of in previous realignment rounds, is that like Cincinnati joins the Big 12, its entire recruiting footprint is going to change a little bit. Like when UCF joins the Big 12, its recruiting footprint is going to change a little bit. You never really know how a team is going to react. Because like, look at what moving to the Big 10, part of what's happened in Nebraska is they don't have that same kind of access to Texas and Oklahoma that they had when they were part of the Big 12. And it's affecting their impact and it's affecting their identity now of what they're trying to be as a program. And we don't know how it's going to impact BYU, Cincinnati, UCF. I think Houston's obviously in the best position to just show up and be Houston right away.
So how long until Nebraska joins this coaching carousel portion of our weekly check-ins?
Oh, I don't think it's much longer.
Yeah, this is very, very close to the end. And I guess if everyone seems to agree on that one, is today has been a wild day in Gainesville. I don't know how everyone's feeling about Dan Mullen and the future of the Florida program. I don't have a good gauge yet on how serious this is or whether it's just wildly uncomfortable, whether this is just shutting down media access around a program that is reeling just a little bit and potential staff changes to come, or whether this is something that's really concerning. I mean, what do you make out of a wild Monday in Gainesville?
I have a lot of thoughts.
Good. Let's go.
Okay.
That's what this is for.
All right. So off the jump, I do want to say I actually still think Dan Mullen's a good coach. And I actually still have had to manually downgrade them a little bit in my power ratings because on a play-to-play basis, they've actually still been a very strong team this year. They have 2 losses rather, that I grade as like super fluky because they had a lot of return touchdowns go against them. And we know that's not really repeatable skill. They played Bama really close. And on a down-to-down basis, they actually competed with Georgia fairly well. And then they had a 3-minute meltdown, which is probably the biggest 3-minute meltdown that we've ever seen in this sport right before the half, which was just crazy. The thing is, though, I used to be on a podcast called Podcast Ain't Played Nobody. It's gone now. But Stephen Godfrey, who covered Dan Mullen and knows that situation pretty well, he always said how bad Mullen was in interviews for jobs, right? And there's a reason, like he didn't get the Miami job. He didn't get the Tennessee job twice. There were other SEC jobs he interviewed for and didn't get. And the guy who hired him was a dude who really didn't have to interview him. I'm not saying Scott Strickland didn't interview him, but he had worked with him. So he wasn't having to like make a first impression in an interview. It doesn't shock me that Mullen repeatedly says stuff in press conferences that is seen as awkward or very easily misinterpreted, as he was today when he said, I'll talk about recruiting when it's time for recruiting. Now, what he meant was, like, we're in the season right now. I want to talk about the season, how it's being interpreted as, I'm not recruiting right now, which is exactly the criticism that a lot of Florida fans levy at him. Now, that's not, it's incorrect to say that Florida does not recruit. I think they're actually a decent team this year in what was expected to be a bit of a down year, a bit of a transition year, not a terrible year. They're underachieving expectations, but they are not close to catching Georgia and Alabama. And this is year 4 for Mullen there. And I think Florida fans are saying, hey, we know what this program looks like when it is at peak capacity. That's Urban, that's Spurrier, and Florida is not recruiting at that level. So I do think they'll probably have to make a defensive coordinator change and maybe another change or two to get some more dogs in there on the recruiting trail. But man, they cancel our media availability. It's not great when you have to protect your head coach from himself from saying stupid stuff.
What do you say to, because you say they're not close to catching Georgia or Bama. They beat Georgia last year, gave Alabama maybe their best test of the year. And this year almost beat Alabama. And I still feel like I was on the right side, plus 14.5, whatever our number was that it closed at, because I will refuse to give into that one. But I didn't think it was that glaring of a talent gap. Is it that bad on the recruiting trail? I mean, the roster makeups.
So they're just not like Florida State and Miami. If you're Florida, you're coming off 2 BCS bowls in a row. You should be kicking their ass, and you are just not. Mike Norvell is beating Dan Mullen on the recruiting trail right now. Norvell's like 7-14 in Tallahassee. That should not happen. That's a staff issue and a recruiting mentality issue. You talk to guys who work for like a Mario Cristobal or for Saban. Those dudes, they live, eat, breathe, sleep recruiting. They find a way to bring up recruiting in every single meeting. I don't get the feeling that Mullen is that type of guy. I don't think he cares about recruiting to that level. And in college, you are responsible for the talent you bring in. That's why I made the argument over the summer that Florida fans would much rather have Kirby Smart. And they went nuts on me for it. And now I bet you they all agree with me. So how about that, guys? But I do still think his scheming is great. But if you're going to not be a great recruiter, you better be a really, really good play caller. And you cannot commit 15 penalties in a game. And yeah, man, they're not happy with him down there in Gainesville right now.
So, I mean, what's the next job that you think comes open? I think Dan Mullen's probably still Florida's head coach in 2022. How about that?
Yeah.
He's probably going to go 8-4, and then you breathe a sigh of relief. I mean, if he loses to Florida State, that won't look great, but I still think, they just extended him again. But I did see that his buyout's very unique. It's $12 million every single year. It doesn't go, it's just $12 million, flat buyout.
Yeah, but it's payable over a long-term period. If Florida wants him gone, that is not going to cost them much at all. They could axe him tomorrow and not feel it.
But I still find this as part of the beginning of pressure for next season, not as a turning point where Florida makes a change in this offseason. Not anywhere close to, as we suggested with our positivity, the belief that Nebraska is going to quickly join the ranks of Power 5 schools that are looking to replace their football coach. Who else is on the list of, I heard Spencer Hall one time call them the good boys, all the good little boys, all the boys who are on the agent's approved list. Good dogs, I think was it. He's a good dog. James Franklin's a good dog. You could imagine James Franklin going into any Power 5 job and being able to be successful. So who's going to be on that list that is, the 4 or 5 guys that you think are going to end up getting connected to a lot of these jobs that include TCU, that include Texas Tech, and potentially might include the likes of Nebraska?
Napier, Grinch, Dan Lanning, trying to think of other guys here. I got
a question for you.
Yeah.
Does Brent Venables leave?
Maybe.
No.
I don't think he's going to get a head coaching job.
I think if Brent Venables wanted a head coaching job, he would have had one by now.
Yeah.
Kansas State both made the most sense at the time, and he was very comfortable, very locked in at that point.
He gets paid very well to just coordinate a defense and not be the guy on the hot seat.
Todd Monken. Does he parlay this into? There's just.
Have we seen enough from Georgia's offense to really think?
No. Years. Who cares? There's some people that, they've got that tap, right? They've been christened at the AFCA conference at the secret meeting where they decide like, oh, you are a coach who is deserving of the path to the top. You know what I'm talking about. They're just sort of industry approved names.
It's whoever hired Jimmy Sexton.
The guys with the right
Yes.
friends.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean,
Would a Randabell on Baylor?
I don't think so. I think he's got a pretty good job at Baylor. You could argue that Baylor
Jeff
also
Grimes.
wants to be in that spot where it is one of the best programs in the new Big 12.
Okay,
Jeff
so
Grimes,
this
maybe?
also brings up some. Yeah, Danny, that's a good one too. Let me throw this out there if I can. Are coaches going to continue to see the Big 12 as a Power 5 league?
that's what I'm interested in finding out with this coaching search. And that's the thing, because I do think that the way things are
Team
going,
quality, it's not.
yeah, like I mentioned this in Slack last night when the Gary Patterson news broke, that I thought that's going to be the most interesting thing about this job search is, on the one side, are you going to get a coach that's going to view TCU as the guy, that the school that could be the Big 12 power of the future? Or are you going to get coaches looking at that job and saying, well, yeah, it's going to be the best team in the Big 12, but the Big 12 is just going to be a G5 conference?
Mike Elko.
Yeah, I think so.
It is a wide list that includes sitting head coaches and also coordinators on the rise. I mean, you could keep going all the way to like 12, 13, 14 names. And to Bud's point that he made once, and I continue to bring up over and over again about the window, Sonny Dykes, Billy Napier, Jay Norvell, and Hugh Freeze all have quarterbacks right now that will not be there next year. If I was all four of those head coaches, I think your window is right now to be able to go and make that jump.
Matt Campbell going to come up again?
If I was Matt Campbell, I would be interested. Though I've got Matt Campbell in my fan fiction narrative penciled in as the Michigan State or Penn State target should Michigan State or Penn State come open.
For sure. I wonder if Nebraska came open, if Matt Campbell would have interest in that gig.
We got a carousel
why should
coming
he
up.
not?
It's going to be one for the ages. That's all I know. This
Mhm.
thing's going to be nuts.
Yeah, the dominoes are really going to be pretty interesting here, and we're going to figure out like quite a bit what the agent industry thinks about some of these jobs with all this conference realignment stuff.
Yeah,
it's going to be fun.
It's going to be really fun. Like I am a little bit guilty that I get so much enjoyment from the hiring and firing and the coaching carousel. Like it is interesting. I do not know what's going to happen. There are just a lot of dominoes that are going to fall, and it's all going to happen in the next 2 months or so. And we look forward to bringing you all the twists and turns here on the Cover 3 podcast.
I got a
Here's
couple
a
more
name.
names. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Coca just mentioned one. How about Graham Harrell? I mean, look at what North Texas was when Graham Harrell was its OC, and look at what North Texas has been since Graham Harrell left for USC. And again, he's coached in Texas before, so he's got to be good.
That's a good point. A couple coordinators from the SEC West. I think Mississippi State defensive coordinator Zach Arnett has been a tremendous hire for Mike Leach. He's a guy who's coached in different places, young dude, solid recruiter, runs an interesting scheme. Has obviously, I think it's good that he's actually been with a very offensive coach now, because you don't want to hire that defensive coordinator guy who's like super stodgy. You wanted to turn around like Aranda in year 2, not year 1 Aranda, like he was last year. And then also, what about Jeff Levy and Kendall Briles? I mean, obviously there's the old Baylor connection, but I think they, to some extent, distanced themselves enough from that to where they've been able to get hired at other places. We haven't seen somebody from that Baylor staff get a head coaching job since, I don't believe. But I think that will probably be coming at some point.
Kendall, Texas Tech makes sense to me. Like if Texas Tech runs through, a couple or maybe a candidate or two end up going somewhere else like that. I've been calling Billy Napier the LSU floor and saying that's still a pretty good position to be in. Kendall Briles might be the Texas Tech floor, and that still might be a good position to be in.
It also, there are some very vocal boosters there who want Art Briles, and the administration's like, hell no, for obvious reasons, right?
Okay, hear me out. I've got another one.
Yeah,
okay, I've got another
that could be the way they backdoor that.
What about Hugh Freeze to TCU?
Yeah, makes sense. Would be a good opportunity. If I was you, I would take it.
How strong? Okay, I'm not saying this in a sarcastic manner. I'm saying this legitimately. How is the C and TCU capital?
We're about forgiveness here, but That's what the whole Christian
Okay.
religion is about. We forgive.
I agree, but I'm saying, like, does TC image wise, because at Liberty clearly, like, they'll tolerate anything, but does TCU care about that kind of stuff? Because if so, that could matter with the hiring freeze or not.
I think
Could.
it's already in the
Yes.
rear view. I think
Yeah.
he got the second chance. He's he's kept it clean.
Mary Magdalene was in the Bible. Hugh Freeze can coach at TCU.
What about Garrett Riley? Last name, Lincoln's brother, SMU. Tanner Mordecai is having a great season, but maybe he just goes with Sonny and then parlays that move into another one. Maybe it's too early. Another
Or maybe
job.
if Sonny leaves, he stays and gets promoted.
Maybe.
That's promoted.
Yeah.
It'd be a great.
I really like your Jeff Grimes recommendation, Danny, because we watched Virginia and BYU on Saturday night, watching those two offenses play, and then watching the BYU offense last year, now watching this Baylor offense this year under Grimes. I want more BYU coaches running teams.
You know who I think is done, but it'll happen after the season and it'll be handled the right way, is Cutcliffe at Duke. It's been bad. It's been they're not very competitive now. I don't know. I've heard a couple things that, hey, he's going to quit. He's going to retire.
Well,
or do something. But he won't be at Duke next year.
There's
gonna
to replace
be a bunch,
Coach
man.
K and Cut at the same time. Going to be interesting times in Durham.
Like, would you rather have Duke or Texas Tech? This is a good example of what I'm talking about with, do you still consider the Big 12 a Power 5 conference? I know they filled all their spots real quickly to try to, like, not have that long period of not having enough teams so they would not fail to be considered a P5 league. But, like, how will coaches view this? Would you rather have a job in the ACC or Texas
Give
Tech?
us some fire. Tell the people that Duke's a better job than Texas Tech.
I'm
not saying it is.
I'd rather have
Duke.
Okay, Tom did it.
Give me Duke, because I can go 5-7 there for a decade and never be in trouble.
It's kind of Kentucky-ish in that way, right?
I mean,
Texas
Durham.
Tech. Texas Tech's going to fire me if I'm not going to a bowl game every year. At very
Texas
least.
Tech's got expectations. They're not justified, but they have them.
Durham, Lubbock. Give me Duke.
Yeah.
So, right. So this is the other part of this that we talk about sometimes. Fans are going to say Texas Tech. Coaches actually care about, like, where do you live? Can I raise my kids and have both of my kids make it through high school? Can I coach here for 6 years?
What's the income tax in North Carolina, though, Chip?
Is Texas one of those no state in? We do.
Correct.
We pay
Texas 0.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And I love my services that I get as North Carolina taxpayer.
Next on the Reason podcast.
All right. Coming up on the other side, listen, this coaching carousel conversation is literally going to continue for the next 6 weeks, and we will continue to update you on all of the latest here on the Cover 3 podcast. But we've got a big week in college football, a big announcement on Tuesday night. So we will do our college football rankings discussion here on the other side. Polls versus playoff. What do we expect from the selection committee and more next?
The world's on fire again, and it's Ralph's job to put it out. We can handle it. We're so back.
New SEAL Team, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
New AP Top 25 released on Sunday. Georgia still the unanimous #1 team. Cincinnati at 2, Alabama at 3, Oklahoma at 4. Michigan State up 3 spots to #5, jumping ahead of Ohio State. Oregon staying put at #7. Notre Dame 8, Michigan 9, Wake Forest 10. The Demon Deacons in the top 10 for the first time in the AP poll era. Our guy Ralph Russo dropped an interesting note coming off of the rankings release, which is that no college football playoff selection committee ranking, the first batch, has ever fallen in line with the AP poll on the 4 teams. Now, are they just being arrogant, or are we going to learn some things? What are we expecting from the committee rankings as they are going to be released on Tuesday? Reminder, we will be doing live committee rankings reaction pod here on CBS Sports on Cover 3. You can watch it live, youtube.com/cover3, or download it shortly after the finishing of the taping. What are we expecting from, all of the hooded secret society as they emerge with their smoke from Dallas?
Well, based on our show bet, we know what Bud's expecting and what I'm expecting.
Right.
Cincinnati's out. Bama's in. Is that? I didn't even hear the bet.
But Bud thinks that Cincinnati will be in the top 4 tomorrow night because he's naive and out of his mind. Clearly.
I think they might go 4. You don't think they'll get 4?
No, because if you have them in the top 4, then if they win out, you have to explain why you've dropped them.
But you can get past. Like, can't we at least wrap our mind around the idea that in like
it's not a drop
ranking system
because they redo them every week. It's brand new every week, Tom, as they always say.
Yeah, no, they're not putting them. They don't want who's got to be the poor son of a bee that's got to talk to the media when the rankings come out. Who's the guy?
Gary Patterson,
Kirby Hocutt, right?
Yeah, no, it's still the Iowa.
So it's Barta still. Barta does not want to sit on ESPN and get peppered by Reese Davis for 20 minutes about what about Cincinnati's 40-point win over whoever the hell they played in the AAC title game wasn't impressive enough to you. They're just going to keep him at 7.
Yeah, he's got to be the meat shield, man. He's got to be out there, and because it's going to be so much better for those shows and for the playoff discussion. If we are yelling about Cincinnati and it continues to be a driving narrative, like if all top 4 teams win, we still instantly have a debate on the following Tuesday because of where Cincinnati is and whether or not Cincinnati's going to move.
There are 4 undefeated Power 5 teams remaining right now. Cincinnati will not be in the top 4.
And you think Wake Forest will be ahead of Cincinnati?
No. I'm just saying, I think Wake Forest will be much higher in the playoff rankings than it is in either the coaches or the AP poll.
That's a good observation.
Ooh. Can I get in on the bet? I think Cincinnati checks in at 4.
Okay,
committee.
Cool. I'll get paid twice. I don't care.
You know what the best part about it is that because they'll be different than the AP until next week. And then the AP just like there's no fortitude. There's no fortitude to these voters. They just want to be closely aligned and look like, oh yeah, they must be. Look how smart they are. And we want to be right there because no one has any fortitude to stick with what they thought this week. They want to be closer aligned to what the committee thinks. So then then we'll forget about those and we'll focus on the committee. But I just think it's funny how all of a sudden a lot of switches take place next week in the AP top 25 too.
One team that I think will be a lot higher than people realize, by the way, because I was just putting together some of these numbers. I look at FPI's resume strength, and I look at Connolly's resume SP plus, and I just averaged them together. Michigan actually has a crazy high 6.5 average. I think they're like 9th in ESPN's strength of record and like 4th in resume SP plus. That's going to surprise some people tomorrow night. I think that surprised me. So I'm assuming it's going to surprise y'all. Like I don't see them that high, but apparently they're going to be.
Is Michigan going to be ahead of Cincinnati?
But they will tell you though
no recency bias of the loss. I will say no.
They will tell you though. Won't they tell you though that they have their own metrics? They're not.
The ones that he's referencing, I think that are on
they use those
the committee sheets.
But those are ESPN. Then that
looks but they also used game control, which debuted in 2014 when they were trying to keep FSU out. Went away for the next 7 years. Maybe it'll come back now, but that was also an ESPN stat.
It is. It's called average win probability. They use
the ESPN. The ESPN also, production uses ESPN stats. That is crazy.
Seth Byrne, by the way, has I think it was Seth or it was one of the Seths on Twitter has basically shown that like ESPN's win probability model is not accurate.
Well, it's what they're using really for game control for the college football playoff.
Yeah.
It's also what they use for the probability of a team that's going to be in a playoff in which there is no set guidelines, or nor do we understand what the playoff committee uses to put teams there. So, but hey, it makes for content.
I'm with Coca. Coca just chimed in. I want to see what they do with Oregon and Ohio State.
Oregon will be ahead of Ohio State.
I hope so. They should be.
I think based on what the committee has done, at least that we've seen on a consistent basis, at least at this point in the season, they'll lean on the head-to-head if it's close. At the end of the year, I doubt that'll matter if both win out.
That's a great call because so many times the committee has told us about the incomplete resume, and they often do talk about to this point. That's also how Cincinnati ends up getting passed at the end of the season because we've got additional quality wins that just aren't going to be there. I think I agree with you, Tom, on that. What about further down in the rankings? Are there any the expectations? Like, are you going to have an overvalued Texas A&M, Auburn, Ole Miss trio? Like, are you expecting to see?
Absolutely.
All those 2-loss SEC teams will be ahead of every G5 team that is not Cincinnati. They will be ahead of
Cincinnati.
most. They will be ahead of. I think they'd put them ahead of BYU for sure.
Who is the next highest group of 5 team? Is it going to be UTSA undefeated at 8-0, or is it going to be Houston at 7-1?
Houston.
I think it's UTSA, but
the zero in the loss column has I feel like that's something that matters to the committee.
It does, but I mean, they're going to look at UTSA's resume, and what's the best win?
It's thumping. Well,
Illinois or Memphis.
It was Western Kentucky, I thought, but
I think, but I'm just saying that's. But they're not going to look at it.
Committee.
Yeah, they're not going to look at it from that angle. They're going to say, well, they did beat a Power 5 team in Illinois, which is clearly more impressive than anything else. But it's just, I think that Houston, especially benching the recency bias, just beat an SMU team that, had the playoff rankings come out last week, would have been ranked in their top 25. So I think they're going to look at that, and they'll have Houston ahead as the second highest G5 team, which honestly, if you're Cincinnati, is exactly what you want to see.
True. Texas A&M will probably be the top 2-loss team, undoubtedly.
Might be Auburn, but I think so because that Alabama win is going to be better than whatever Auburn has. And guess what? They play each other. So we'll get to settle that one this Saturday in the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. Reminder, you can catch that game for free on the CBS Sports app or on cbssports.com. Any other bold predictions before we move on to upon further review?
Just want to note, for the playoff purposes, the SEC does need Ole Miss to beat Liberty this weekend. Like, they're a 10-point favorite. If Liberty goes in there and beats Ole Miss in Oxford, assuming that Corral actually plays, then some of this falls apart a little bit, right? Because Bama's best win to this point doesn't look anywhere near as good.
Yeah, it won't matter.
Auburn's best win doesn't look near as good. Okay,
it won't. I think it should, but it won't.
It's just one data point, so it shouldn't make it all fall apart. But
right,
what a broken Danny. We've these playoff talks. We haven't even had the first release yet.
Where's Notre Dame going to be?
Notre Dame will be behind Oregon and Ohio State. I think it'll end up being behind Michigan.
I think it'll be behind Wake too.
I agree. I think it'll be
I'm curious to see where Wake goes. Where do you think Wake
is? 7th or 8th.
7th or 8th, yeah.
So just a spot or two higher than the top. Coaches had them at 9. AP had them at 10.
A top five of Georgia, Oklahoma, Michigan State, Ohio State, Alabama, then Cincinnati, then Oregon, then Wake, and then
you just had Ohio State ahead of Oregon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Swap Oregon and Ohio State. My bad.
Would you be totally shocked if Oklahoma is behind Wake?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Texas
8-0, 9-0. Texas is a 4-4 team right now. Average margin of victory versus Power 5. Wake 17 points. Oklahoma 12 points. No wins against top 25 teams for either. Wake has 2 wins over 500 Power 5 teams. Wake is named Wake Forest. Oklahoma is named Oklahoma. So that's the last thing I said is the most important thing there. I think they don't really.
Correct.
It's not a. They don't really care. But
let me do my Gary Barta impression for you here, bud.
Yeah.
Well, Reese, that's an interesting question, and it is something we evaluated. But the committee thinks that Oklahoma, ever since making the change to Caleb Williams, has really taken on a new dynamic offensively, and we really like what we've seen from there, which is why when it was a very close battle between Oklahoma and Wake Forest, whom we respect, we think they're doing a wonderful job. They're playing very well, and they're undefeated, and we're thinking that there are more good things coming ahead for them. But we just think that right now, the Oklahoma that we've seen in the recent weeks with Caleb Williams is slightly ahead of the Demon Deacons, so that's why we have them there.
Also, I spoke with Colin Kennedy this morning from our Oklahoma 24/7 sports site, and Oklahoma is expected to get all of those defensive backs back by next weekend. They're on bye this week. So this little 3-week blip where their defense was horrendous as opposed to just decent could be over.
Tom, you left out one thing. You got to say the margins are close. It's really
the margins
really
are very close, razor thin. We've been locked in that room for the last 72 hours. Nobody's been allowed to leave. People are peeing in bottles as we try to break this down.
there's each one of those is 13 members, right? I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Who
So
cares?
it's like each individual can swing up to like 7 to 8% of the vote. The margins aren't that small. There are some pretty dramatic votes at some point in the process.
But remember, they're all staring at the same numbers that
yeah.
are chosen for them to stare at, which might help steer them in a certain direction. Might not. Who knows? We won't.
Tinfoil hats. Love it.
It's not tinfoil hats, Chip. It's just the reality.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
No, I'm not.
Upon further review, with the chance to go back and look at all of the action, either takes that we didn't get a chance to offer in the Instant Reaction podcast or thoughts that have continued to linger. But you dropped a whole bunch of them. So I'll go ahead and let you lead off. What really stood out to you when you were starting to pull your notebook together from Saturday?
Just the number of like close plays that Michigan State had to beat Michigan. I mean, if they play that game, I bet Michigan State, and I'm not really sure that I would again. Like, I know they had the more explosive day. Walker had a great day, but they were just lucky's not the right word, but they had a lot of things go right on the margins in that game. And I think Michigan actually played fairly well in a losing effort. I went back and watched that Florida game this morning up until the point where it got out of hand. Guys, Georgia did not dominate Florida on a play-to-play basis. That game was actually pretty close for about the first 25 or so minutes. Georgia did not drive on Florida, really. I mean, now granted, they had some short fields in the end of the second half to where you're not going to have long drives if you start on the 20 of the opponent, but they weren't going on like long sustained drives. They didn't look like an elite offense to me. However, I really at no point felt that Florida was going to score on them either. So that is a problem. Like, okay, was plus 14.5 the wrong side here? And if so, how wrong was it? Right? Because I like to try to figure out like where were my bets wrong? Where was I unlucky? UNLV under, by the way, definitely the right side. That game, I think it had 730 total yards of offense and like 80 points. They had 3 defensive scores in that game. So that one hurts. Wisconsin, given how slow Iowa plays, it's hard to have 11 tackles for loss, and they did. Like, Iowa is not just quarterback or receiver. Their offensive line is getting beat up the last couple of weeks. That's kind of depressing there. West Virginia, post-bye week, is scoring on people 2 weeks in a row. Something to note. Producer Coca, maybe a little more insight on that. They're putting up points now.
Jarrett Doegie's just a stud.
Maybe Kirk Soraka is calling the plays as opposed to Neil Brown. I don't know. Just some speculation there. I did a little search on Mountaineer Twitter. And then Pitt got hit by explosive plays, which is their one weakness. And Van Dyke really exploited that. That's kind of my morning going through the big plays and critical plays exercise.
2 games that I think were both 7:00 kicks, and we're not in the primary screen as we were, trying to pull everything together, finish writing assignments, and be here for you on the Instant Reaction pod. I didn't get to enjoy Houston SMU. I think it was probably one of the best games of the day, and for it to end on a 100-yard return to win the game is incredible, and the significance that it carries for Houston in terms of like the rest of its schedule. Like, guess what? SMU is going to be playing Cincinnati in the regular season. Houston doesn't have to. The chances of Houston to be able to make the American Athletic Conference championship game are looking pretty good. USF, Temple, Memphis, and UConn is the remaining schedule. I guess that UConn game is the ultimate wouldn't be hilarious just because they'll have the conference season locked up against the old conference foe. But 7 wins in a row since a blown lead to Texas Tech in the opener. Dana Holgerson's team is one of the hottest in the country. And I didn't really get to watch the very end. The NC State Louisville game started a little bit ugly and a little bit clunky, but I think that the significance of the win for a team that's taken that many injuries along the way, just getting W's for the Wolfpack and staying in that race is the most important thing. They got a tough one in Tallahassee against Florida State, and then Wake Forest on the other side of that, a game that will likely play a huge role in deciding that Atlantic division. So that was just based on like the flow of my workday, 2 7:00 results that really stood out to me when I went back to watch them because I didn't really get many eyes on them on Saturday.
On that NC State game, Louisville played them very much head up for about the first, 50 minutes or so. And then NC State just turned it into a gear, which is the gear I wanted to see them hit against Mississippi State and against Miami, which is just playing to their potential, I think. And they just absolutely put it on Louisville in like the final 10 to 12 minutes of that game. And like they were down with what, a quarter to go or so. And then they end up they end up like 3 scores towards the end of the game. And Louisville punches one to cut it to 2. That was impressive closing power from those guys. Devin Leary, David Hale had a stat, and I don't know what it was off the top of my head, but like he's having a season this year as far as protecting the football and actually throwing for scores that is like one of the better seasons in the last decade.
I just to look at Georgia, it's so eerily familiar. The Georgia hatred that their fans have for me is so similar to what the Bama fans had like 2015, 2016, like 2014, 15, 16, when they had unbelievable defenses and Jake Coker at quarterback. You know, like it's a problem. And maybe it's not. Maybe JT Daniels swoops in and he's the guy that we all thought he was going to be. And he's a first round draft pick and just convinces everyone, oh, okay, we're just going to be fine. They're not going to get tested until the SEC championship game. And I think that's a problem. I think they're going to roll. Like, who's the best quarterback that they've faced? And it's not exactly a laundry list of opponents. And so they've been able to get away with handing the ball off. And Stetson Bennett kind of got exposed a little bit, didn't have his best game. They need to they're going to at some point need another gear offensively. And I don't know if JT Daniels is the guy to do that. We can all think he is, because he put up big numbers at the end of last year, but he didn't play great against Cincinnati in the bowl game. That was probably the best defense he's faced.
Glad you brought it up because I wrote about it today. I'm not sure it's going to matter.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking about this because that Jake Coker team had to face Deshaun Watson and Clemson. Who is that Deshaun Watson Clemson team out there? Because Ohio State, they didn't look very good against Penn State. Like, they got the dub, but Penn State had guys open, and if they didn't have Sean Clifford and they had a QB who could pull the trigger, maybe they're hitting some stuff on them. And Ohio State was not able to run the ball in Penn State after Illinois ran it all over their ass. So I'm kind of thinking it may not matter.
And another thing too, right. Like Stetson Bennett right now is 4 pass attempts shy of being able to be, a qualified passer for like passer rating and all those kind of stats. If he'd thrown 4 more passes this season, do you know where he would rank nationally as far as passing efficiency?
Got to be number 1, right?
Second.
Okay.
Caleb Williams, who has made up for lost time in a quick
Player of the month.
But yeah, he would rank second nationally. He would lead the SE in pass efficiency. And it's like, so, I'm not sure Georgia actually has a quarterback controversy. I think we're just looking for something to nitpick and saying could be the one thing. And it might be. Like, they get behind. Yeah, that's a problem. But Oklahoma with Caleb Williams, if they're down by 20 points to anybody, they're in trouble with Caleb Williams. So it's like, I don't know how big of a deal it's going to be. And also another thing too, because like you think, okay, well, if they're going to put this up, I was doing the research article today. The season has played 8 games, and it has been in 3rd and long 27 times. One team has been in 3rd and long fewer times. It's Army. They've been in 25 times with less game. Georgia doesn't get in 3rd and long situations where it needs a quarterback to make a play because it's on 1st and 2nd down that it's all elementary anyway, and you can't score points on them. So I don't know that they really think that they are just there.
Is it my internet or is it Tom's?
No, I think it's Tom's.
Yeah.
All right. I want to say one thing to agree with Tom here. I do think Georgia's defense is like probably so much better than the number 2 defense as well in a way that maybe like there were some defenses that were somewhat close to Bama's defense in 2015, 2016. So like that's where the Jacob Coker thing, I'm not gonna say falls apart, but maybe it doesn't hit quite as hard for me because like my second best defense in the country right now is Clemson, followed very closely by Wisconsin. And I do think that Georgia is like a significant step ahead of both those defenses. Like,
I agree.
They're just a different, like they might be a generational unit right now to where if Georgia could run the ball and play pass, they can cash that 10-1 ticket for me with Stetson Bennett as quarterback. God, I hope so.
It reminds me of I remember going into the Oklahoma Georgia Rose Bowl, there was some stat about Georgia having the best third down defense in the nation, and the counter was Oklahoma doesn't get to third down. What's Georgia going to do on third and long? Well, to Tom's point, they just don't get to third and long. That is simply a great way to handle that situation. All right. Any other upon further? Tom, thanks for bringing up the Monday after column. I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet. I've got it pulled up on my screen. I will be reading it as I export the audio. Well, you came in with all that great, like Gary Patterson stats, like you'd compiled it all. And I was like, you know what? It kind of sounds like Tom wrote about this. You also did that too. So for more on Tom's thoughts on the Georgia quarterback situation, Gary Patterson and more, be sure to check out his Monday after column on cbssports.com. Anything else for upon further review?
I've seen a lot of criticism about Michigan using McCarthy and the turnovers late in the game. I think that's a lot of results-based criticism because Michigan's been using McCarthy pretty regularly for a few weeks now, and they weren't losing games because of it. I think it was just he was in the game and he made a mistake, and crap happens sometimes.
I feel better. That was my response to a Baltimore radio station this morning. The host was furious with the decision to bring McCarthy in when you should have left it with the old guy, he said, instead of making the rookie go in there. It's like, I don't know, probably was part of the game plan. It's been part of the game plan previous weeks. Probably just going to stick to the game plan is what I'm sure that I'll tell you. All right, we've got at this point in the year, it is one of the most fabulous times of the year. We've got midweek Maction on deck, and we want to make sure that if there are any games that we particularly like, or any bets or sides that we want to give you the angles on, that we still deliver them here on the Cover 3 podcast. So each Monday, if we've got midweek Maction on deck, since we're not going to necessarily give you the chance before those Tuesday night games kick off, we want to offer our Mac Locks. So with 5 games, 2 of them on Tuesday, or I guess 3 of them on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, are there any games or picks that stand out that you would want to offer to the good listeners of the Cover 3 podcast as a Mac Lock?
I don't have anything that I love on the 3 games on Tuesday night, although pay attention to the weather forecast in both the Akron and Toledo games and in the Ohio games, because it could be pretty windy come Tuesday night. So that's for that. But for Wednesday, I really like Central Michigan getting 10 if you can find it. And I'm also kind of fond of Northern Illinois getting 3.5.
Tom and I are in total agreement there. I played NIU 5. There was some 10.5. It was weird. I played the 10, and then there was some 10.5 that popped, but I ended up with some 10 there. I think those are both good numbers, Tom. You can run the ball on Kent State, and NIU is a team that wants to run it a whole lot. I keep saying NIU's lucky, and then I keep betting on NIU, and they keep winning for me. So it's kind of weird. I'm like, hey, I don't like them that much, but like Vegas likes them even less than I do, so that creates value. Blah 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 blah. I also like Ohio catching 7 or more, and Akron getting the 20.
So Ohio catching 7 or more at home against
Mac
Miami Ohio on Tuesday night, and Akron plus the 20 dogs. I mean, just line up for me some home dogs and unders for a windy Tuesday in the MAC.
Also, Tom, can you explain this? I hit under 64 in Central Michigan, Western Michigan, and this line has done nothing but go against me on this. It's like 67 now. What? Why?
Maxton. I don't know, because there hasn't been a whole lot of public. So I'm guessing we're going to find out that maybe a key defensive player or 2 are suddenly missing. But I don't know because I know it's really strange. And then if you look at the numbers, it's like most of the money to this point, and we haven't really seen a whole lot of public action, is on the under.
And this is for which of those 2 Wednesday games where it's up?
Central Michigan, Western Michigan.
This may be a release by one of the groups. I'll text and we'll talk about it on Wednesday, I guess. But
what does that mean?
So like there are groups out there who have like a lot of buying power, and they hit it, and then they also release it, and then their followers go and hit it, and it moves the market.
Is that
it's like Bitcoin but betting?
Yeah, like the NFT space.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! Boy, learn something new every day here on the Cover 3 podcast. I mean, that's impressive stuff. Text your people. We'll know by Wednesday whether or not this was a release for this Wednesday night game. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.